everybody? It's Dave here from Two Old Bloggers. Good Morning Gallahorn spinoff show. We're part of the Climb in the Pocket Network and partner with Daily Norsemen. But I'm only one part of the old bloggers. The other part is sitting next to me, probably 1,000 miles away, up in Yellowknife, Canada. Mr. Darren Campbell, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Dave. Soaking up the whole 6 days after a Viking victory. So first one
Yeah.
of the year. Made the Sunday very nice, and the whole rest of the work week nice too. Just kept on thinking. Anytime I got bored or with work or annoyed with it, I just thought about the Vikings beating the Seahawks, and I was all good.
Yes, it was a good week. Skull
Skull
Clifford,
Clifford.
Skull Viking Jerome, Skull Mary, Skull Joseph. Glad you have you guys here today.
Thanks
There
for
are
showing up.
plenty of storylines abound coming up tomorrow. Now, I know we feature quite a few, and we will, but we'll also talk about what it will take to continue the Vikings winning streak. Right now it's at 1. Can they get to
Yeah.
2?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, really, exactly. Yeah, got to keep on stacking up those wins.
Yep. Hey there, Quang. How you doing? Well, we'll start this. The first thing you wanted to talk about
What's Quang got? What was he holding there in the photo?
looks like a
Quang,
samurai
make
sword.
another. Yeah, that's what I thought too, but I didn't want to be like stereotypical about it.
Um, but anyways, the first thing you wanted to talk about was the Vikings front seven has to slow down the two-headed running back game of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
They do, and what a challenge this is going to be for
Oh,
the Vikings
yes.
front seven. In case you haven't been following, if you haven't been following the Browns, like there are the stats, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressive on the running side. They haven't run for less than 153 yards in a game in the first 3 games this year, and that's no fluke because last year they were a top rushing attack too. Um, Really, really difficult because the Vikings' run defense has not been particularly stout this year. We saw that again in the first half against Seattle. Chris Carson did everything he wanted to do. Luckily, things changed in the second half, partly because our offense had the ball all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like Nick Chubb, uh, he has been in the league. This is his 4th season in the league, and he's averaging over 5 yards per carry. He's averaged over 5 yards per carry every year this year. So it's not even a case of a couple of years where he had big years and a couple where he was like a regular Joe. He's been like Adrian Peterson peak years, running as far as the type of productivity he has. And Kareem Hunt's no slouch either. What really makes these guys tough is I've watched a couple of the Browns games, and up until last year, probably a lot of us football fans did not watch any Browns games at all because they were terrible and there was really no reason to watch them. But but they got good last year, made the playoffs. You got some airtime, national TV coverage, and the Chubb and Hunt are one thing that the Browns really got going is that they don't both of them are pretty much are in a timeshare as a running
Mm-hmm.
backs. They don't one it's not like the Vikings with Cook who takes the vast majority of the carries. Both of these guys will get roughly an equal number of carries. Chubb usually a little bit more than Hunt, but they're usually around Chubb will get 15, 16 carries a game, and or Chubb will get 18, maybe a bit more. Hunt will get around 14, 15. There's no drop off when these guys go in. Uh, like, and they're very similar in kind of the way they run. They're tough to bring down. They run hard. If you think you got them, they'll stick a foot in the ground and make a quick cut, and they're by you. If you and if excellent wide receivers out of the backfield, and if that's not good enough, they also their offensive line is pretty good.
Hmm.
Some of the games against Kansas City and Houston that I watched earlier this week, there are some massive holes that those guys are running through uh, on fairly regular, frequent occasions. And when you're as good as those two are, and you've got big holes like that, and you get to the second level, really tough for the defense to bring you down in open field like that. And even when the holes look plugged up, it's kind of funny. You don't think anything's there, then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 yards later, they've got a pretty decent gain on first or second down. So very tough because they're very talented backs, both running and receiving. They have an offensive line that is also very good and has played together for the last 2 years. Um, pretty much solidly the whole time.
As
Very,
as I
very
wrote
close.
up in the write up for this show, their offensive line per Football Outsiders DVO rank is second in the league. That's
Yeah.
really, really, really good. Ours is, you'll see it here a little bit later, isn't quite that good, but the Vikings defense will definitely, as Mary said, have a test on their hands come tomorrow.
I don't really see, and I don't see how do the Vikings stop this? Well, none of the three teams that the Browns have played this year have stopped the running game at all. The Chiefs didn't do it, but their defense isn't very good. The Texans were okay in the first quarter, some of the second quarter, but by the second half, they wilted. And then last week, the Bears, who generally have a very good run defense, they got run over big time. They gave up over 200 yards rushing. Now, part of that was because they got wore down because the offense was so terrible. But we've seen the Vikings. What really worries me about this is Michael Pierce might not be playing. He's questionable right now. That's a big, wide body that I
Mm-hmm.
think that would be useful in a game like this. So if he's not playing or his snaps are limited, that means that the Vikings are going to either use Armin Watts as more, or they put Sheldon Richardson more than they have, not just on passing downs but running downs. And either of those guys, I don't think are the run stoppers that Michael Pierce is.
Right,
The other
and
thing that's
if Pierce
go
doesn't
ahead.
if Pierce doesn't play, and from what I gather, the shoulder injury is a pain tolerance type injury. There's no structural damage. From what I've read, that if he doesn't play, expect Dalvin Tomlinson to move down to the middle to play over center, and Sheldon Richardson will become your primary three tech.
Yeah,
But I also expect a whole lot of rotation by Armin Watts to keep those guys somewhat fresh, and Everson Griffin down to the three tech position to see, especially on passing downs, to see how that goes. Hey, G Mac,
and Griff,
welcome to the show. Yes, is
there's
Jerry
Jerry
Ball.
Ball. There's
What a
Jerry.
name,
We could
what a
sure use
stomach.
him. Even now. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out the Griff as a three technique because he did play that quite a bit in the Seattle game. I noticed
Mm-hmm.
that his snaps were really up. They had him on the inside quite a bit, especially on passing downs, but not always on passing downs. It was also on like neutral downs as well, which I thought was interesting because
Well,
the Vikings did that. You remember when the Vikings did that in the New Orleans game, and they had Hunter and Griff both
mm-hmm.
inside on passing downs, and that really threw New Orleans for a loop. But that with if Pierce can't go, we might be seeing Griff in there a lot more. And I don't know how I like that so much because I think we need the beef in the middle.
The meaty
But
boys.
if you don't have all the meaty boys, you got to go with I guess what there is. I
Yeah,
don't. I haven't really been. Armin Watts doesn't. He's not a guy that I really like all that much. He's a big body, but I think in the running game he's not as stout as you'd expect him to be. So if he has to play a lot of snaps, I think that the Cleveland offensive line, the interior, is going to like that a lot more than facing Pierce and Tomlinson. Uh, Richardson, like I said, he's I like Richardson, but again, he's more of a at this point in his career, he's more of a guy you have in the pass rushing downs more than the
Run
neutral or
stuffer.
the possible or the run downs. Not a great matchup for the Vikings, and also the other big thing is, which has been an issue all season, and not just uh, for all 11 guys on defense,
Hmm.
is tackling. Tackling has been terrible. I think
Yes.
a lot of, especially in the open field, you're just seeing big whiffs. It doesn't. Peterson got burned. Xavier Woods got burned last week. Um, Hunter missed a tackle. Now it was a big he got a big mitt in his face from the running back, but even he's missing tackles. If you're not tackling well against the Browns, I think it's a big going to be a big problem for the Vikings. I think the best way that we can expect this to go and for the Vikings to have the most success is really what happened last week, where the offense was the defense's best friend and possessed the ball a lot, especially in the second half, and kept the ball away
Long,
from the
steady
Seattle
drives.
long, steady drives. This time, let's score some touchdowns on those long,
Yes.
steady drives in the second half instead of instead of settling for field goals. But I don't see the Vikings. It'd be great if they could stuff the run, because forcing Baker Mayfield to pass a lot more, I think that's
It's an advantage, and I
maybe
brought
an
up.
advantage, or maybe not with the way our corners play.
Well, I did bring up the injury report because I was curious about Pierce. Odell Beckham, who was limited earlier in the week, will be playing. So that's their primary wide receiver for Baker. And our defensive backfield has to do their thing. Hopefully, the defensive front four does theirs and at least occupies blockers so that linebackers, Kendricks, Vigil, and who knows, maybe even Barr, get room to shut things down at the line of scrimmage. That will be key, in my opinion.
Quang, and I don't think I'm actually pronouncing that right, but he's mentioned a couple of things. He's saying we need Harrison Smith at the line of scrimmage a bit more, being a bit
Mhm.
nosy, and how about throwing four linebackers out there? I think the issue, and a lot of teams, Dave, this has been mentioned on telecasts.
Hmm.
When the Packers were playing and a couple other games, as well as the Vikings games, teams are having, particularly teams facing a really good quarterback, but teams are really having to make a decision. Like, do you if you keep both safeties high, like kind of a cover two thing,
Right?
uh, and say, okay, try to run it on us. That's one thing, and test the quarterback's patience. Uh, in that case, if you do that against the Browns, I think you're really inviting that. I don't think that will work very well, because
No.
they're going to
They're
take
going to
that
run
all
all day.
day. They're going to run all day, and they're going to say thank you very much, and we'll take those 4 or 5 yard, 6 yard gains all the time, and just go down the field and kill a bunch of clock and beat you that way. Now, so the Vikings may have to, I think, bringing Smith or Woods or one or the other, bringing
Hmm.
them up, bringing more guys in the box. Let's see if they play it like that early in the game.
Hmm.
They might want to have to test that out. Try to stuff the run. Try to get Mayfield in more of a obvious passing situations and see what happens. Now, Mayfield has been much more accurate this year than he has in the past. He's completing about 73, 74% of his
Hmm.
passes
That
this
is
year.
more.
The previous 3 years, he was 1 year he was under 60%, which in today's NFL is not very good, and he's been kind of in the low 60s the other 2 years. So he's about 10%. His completion percentage is about 10% better right now than it has been throughout his career. It's early, it's 3 games, but he looks like he's, at least the play calling is allowing him to be a bit more accurate. One thing I noticed about Mayfield is he really likes to, probably most quarterbacks do, but he really likes to like hit when his foot hits on the end of his drop. He likes to hit that first read quickly. If he has to, if he isn't able to hit that first read, and he has to like make decisions after that, that's where things kind of get gummed up in the Browns passing attack, I found. And he does have a tendency to airmail one or two throws a game that are pretty easy throws, and he just overthrows them. Guys, against the Houston game, he overthrew a guy badly on two straight pass attempts, and one of them got picked off. But he's a very mobile quarterback too. Yet another one that the Vikings have
Yeah,
to.
but he's not as joystick mobile
No,
as
no, no.
the previous two, and that's where I think our defense might have a possible in if they can get pressure on him in under 2.5 seconds. They can force the issue, and that will help our defensive backs in the process. The question is, will they? We know Danielle Hunter will be fired up and he should be ready to go, but it's the combination of Weatherly / Wanham / Griffin on the other side. Can they get that along with some sort of quasi push up the middle between Richardson and Tomlinson? We'll see.
And are you able to get the Browns in 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7, 2nd and 6, or third and 6, 3rd and 7, as opposed to like 2nd and 3 or 2nd and 2, or if they get a first down on the first down run and just rinse, repeat, and move down the field consistently all day, just running it on us.
Mary thinks
what
our
we have
D's up to the challenge.
Yeah, the defense. I looked at I watched the Seattle Vikings game again a couple of times on the condensed version, and because I think the Vikings held the ball in the second half. They hit on offense. I think they had the ball 22 minutes or something ridiculous like that, and scored on 3 of their 4 drives in that. And so that obviously helps your defense quite a bit. They're fresh, and it limits the amount of possessions that the opponents get. But when I looked at it again, I did have to give the Vikings credit. They stopped the Seahawks on all 4 of their drives. Now the 4th one was like with a minute left, and there was no chance of anything going on. But the other 3 they stopped them, and then they made some big plays on all 3 of those drives that they hadn't been making in the first half of that game and in many other quarters in the previous 2 games. Like Griffin had that big sack, made it 2nd and 15. That kind of short-circuited the Seahawks drive, their first drive of the half, and in the second drive, they snuffed out a running back screen to Carson, made it 2nd and 6, and then they pressured Wilson and forced him to make an overthrow on a receiver who was open. And the 3rd drive, again, Kendricks had that big sack on first down, made it like 2nd and 14, something like that, and they rolled from there. So they made Vikings defense, as maligned as they have been, as much as you and I have complained about them, they did make some big plays in the second half. I saw some stats on the amount of pressure they got against Wilson in that game, and I can't remember, and I didn't write it down, unfortunately, but it was a fairly high pressure percentage, probably partly because the Seahawks offensive line is not that great, but nonetheless, we did pressure Wilson quite a bit, and that leaves some reason for optimism that tomorrow against the Browns, when they have to pass, the Vikings maybe can get pressure, can force some bad throws from Mayfield, and can get off the field.
Well, speaking of pressures, I was listening, and I want to say it was Mackey was talking about that. There's 2 pressure numbers now. There's total pressures that PFF gives us, and then there's pressures he was looking at someplace, and I don't remember where. Pressures under 2.5 seconds. Because if it's under 2.5 seconds, the pressure obviously is on the quarterback. He still has it in his hands versus a quarterback that's sitting there holding, running outside the pocket and gets pressured on the longer ones. And the pressure under 2.5 seconds, 34% of the rushes fell into that category, and that is a great number for those. So last week, the pressures were up. The speed to pressure has improved tremendously. If that continues against the Browns, that will help tremendously. Absolutely tremendously.
Quang had a pretty good
Yeah.
singer there on Zimmer.
Zib. All right, it's
Yeah.
time to switch to the next topic. The next topic for today is, where did I put those? Here we go. This big guy, Myles Garrett, the number one leading, he's first in the league, sack master after 3 games. He has got 5.5 sacks, and any time in this league, if you can average 1 sack per game, you are doing great. You are one of the best ones. He is at 5.5. You can see his PFF scores there listed. Your question is, with him being so good and our offensive line improving, but not fantastic, how are they going to block this young man?
The answer is they are going to block him in as little time as possible. I think if I think most of you guys have. I don't know if you checked it out, but Will Ludford had a story on the Daily Norseman earlier this week about kind of. I forget what it was about, the Vikings offense and what we've seen so far in the first 3 games. Really good piece. Will always does really good stuff, and he's been on your show before, Dave.
Will's definitely a friend of the show and a good man.
And he had said that a couple of stats from that really jumped out at me was this year, 3 games, mind you, 3 games. So we'll see if that lasts for the other 14. But in 3 games with Kirk's cousin this year, 76% of his pass attempts, he's gotten rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds or less. Last year, that percentage was 49%, significantly lower. So Gary Kubiak was, or Kirk, or both were dependent. I get maybe it was the routes they were running, or maybe it was Cousins' indecision sometimes. But Cousins was holding onto the ball longer when he passed than he is this year so far. And surprise, surprise, the pressure rate is 27% this year, and it was 38, well, almost basically 39% last year. And the sack rate was 7% last year, and right now it's at 4%. So all those things are lower, significantly lower than last year, which is also a good thing. Really, what the Vikings will be doing and have to do in this game is it's not so much blocking Garrett, but getting rid of the ball so you don't have to block him. That's kind of what it comes down to. And if you think that is like only something that the Vikings do, I'll let you know that I didn't watch the Bears game, the Bears-Browns game, because I didn't feel it was I would learn anything from that, because the Bears offense was just set up for failure. But I did watch Houston and the Kansas City games, watched them a couple of times, and even Patrick Mahomes, he and Tyrod Taylor, when he was in there before he got hurt, they got rid of the ball quickly. That was the MO. Get rid of it quickly, get it into somebody's hands, don't hold the ball long, and Kirk Cousins will have to be the same. The same thing. I think that some of the things that they can also do, Houston did it a bit, but they did it more. When Taylor got hurt, he ran for a TD, and then he hurt his ribs or something, and he's been out ever since. And Houston had to go to Davis Mills, a rookie. That went about as well as you would expect. But Houston did. They started chipping Garrett with a running back, along with that helped a bit. They lined up a tight end on his side a little bit, and they continued to try to get the ball out as quickly as they can. So I think those also the other thing that the Vikings can do is they can slide a guard to Garrett's side. That's all. Tight end, slide a guard to protection to Garrett's side, chip him with a running back. But those are 3 things that they can do, and I think you will see a bit of that. But I think the biggest thing is going to be that they're going to continue doing what they've already done the previous 3 games, which is get rid of the ball, within 2.5 under.
Seconds.
Don't hold it. Don't hold it for 3 seconds or longer unless you absolutely have to, or else Garrett will get home eventually.
Relatively shorter passes around the 10-yard maybe 15-yard mark. Anything deep takes time to develop. So
Yep.
he's like most of the season, he relies on Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and those guys, Conklin, to get yards after catch. But you hit on something about chipping. Viking Jerome first said it right here when he posted it, chip his ass, right? And he wasn't the only one. Joseph said sick Ellefson on him. And Quang also said chip him. If you want to listen to some real good offensive line breakdown, listen to a friend of the show, Luke Braun, who does Locked On Vikings. I think it was his Wednesday show. He talked about how in the last game, Bradbury is calling more wall formation type blocking schemes, and they did it especially in the second half. Where he'll
Dave, explain what that means.
Well, I wish I had something to show you, but I don't. He's going to call left or right depending on what side is needed, right? And what it basically does is the guys on that side. Say if you take Bradbury and you take Cleveland and Hill, if Hill needs the help, right? Say their strong side defensive wise, or the most defensive side is to Bradbury's left. He may call whatever the code word was for left. And what that does is those guys on the left, including the right-hand guard, Udo, come together and literally form a wall. And when I say strong side, they're usually outnumbered, right? There's 4 blocking linemen if you take tackle, guard, center, guard. 4 blocking linemen, and they're usually outnumbered. There's 5 rushers on that side. You have 5 defenders on that side. So it's more than a one-on-one situation. He'll call this wall type maneuver. They move over, and they're literally almost shoulder to shoulder in a defensive type blocking stance, blocking these 5 people. Watch the tape, you'll see it. Once you've heard about it, and once you look, you instantly see that's exactly what they're doing. And what happens is they're shuffling the rushers in between these 5, the 4 offensive linemen, and they're literally making a wall on that side, and it's very difficult to get around. O'Neal on the other side, he's on an island. He's got to do his thing, but that's what we pay him for, and he's damn good at it. So it's mostly to the left. You rarely see it to the right because O'Neal's good. But it's because defenses will attack our weaker side of the line, which is the left side. That's where Hill's at. And they'll do that. And it's when they outnumber it. Bradbury sees it. He calls the formation. He changes, he calls the normal formation when he gets up to the line. If they bring somebody up in the box or whatever, because we were facing at least 8 guys in the box most of last week, which makes Alexander Madison's performance on last Sunday just absolutely even more extraordinary. Facing 8 guys in the box, and the way they defeated this was calling this basic wall blocking formation, and it worked to a T. Expect to see that or more of that this Sunday if they put somebody in the box, especially if I could say if either Dalvin or Madison are playing, they're going to focus on that side with Hill. Because if I was Garrett, that's who I want to go against. Pad my stats some more. It's going to be the easiest way. Going over O'Neal's not now. However, over on O'Neal's side, right, you don't have a slouch over there either for defensive end. I'm
glad you brought that up, Dave.
Right here.
Because
Jadeveon Clowney's on the other side.
He is, but how good is Clowney?
He's not bad. He's not great, but he's not bad.
He was the number 1 overall pick.
Right.
And last year he played for the Titans the whole year, and he had 0 sacks. 0. Last week he got 2. The previous 2 weeks he didn't have any. I watched those 2 games. As I said, the Bears game, I don't even know if you can gather anything from it. It was just Fields was overmatched. They had a 37-year-old left tackle trying to block Myles Garrett. No offense, but but Jason Peters was a great left tackle, one of the best. But those days, he's not going to be able to handle Garrett one-on-one. I feel pretty good about O'Neal being able to handle Clowney one-on-one, because I have not seen Clowney do a whole lot in the games that I've watched. He's been pretty much, you would expect. He's got a great reputation. He's never even had 10 sacks in the season, ever. 9.5 is his tops.
Mm-hmm.
I think Clowney is an average player, and Brian O'Neal should be able to handle him for the most part. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about Myles Garrett.
I got one of my dogs asking to go out already.
I'm sure the Vikings are worried about Myles Garrett too. But like you said, there are ways to impact and defend Garrett. The Vikings were going up against Chandler Jones, who had 5 sacks the week before. He did end up getting 1, but I thought his impact in that game was pretty minimal as well. I think the Vikings can game plan and find a way to stop Garrett, because if you stop him, I think you stop the Browns pass rush. And the interesting thing is, Garrett's no joke. Because even on run plays, the Chiefs and the Texans never ran to Garrett's side. Never. They didn't want to have anything to do with Garrett in pass or run. Just so Garrett must get pretty bored over there. I hope he's very bored on Sunday.
Yeah, or if he's not, at least that it's because he's on his backside, because we've defended against him well, or been offended him well. So we'll see. Moving on to the third topic, which is we're going to get to this. The offense. Guys in there have been talking about how good Cousins has been. He's been throwing at a very high percentile. You can see his PFF score is absolutely outstanding. He's one of the best. I don't remember where he's ranked, but he's in the top 5, if I remember correctly. You have his play on top of that O-line play, which we showed you the stat. Let's bring the O-line one back up. Here, the O-line. Now, the stat keepers aren't as friendly on this one. You have Football Outsiders where they literally do the O-line DVOA, right? And they take all the games, average them together. They weight more the more recent games, but we've only played 3, so that doesn't kick in yet.
Yep.
So over the season right now, they have us 18th for the run and 14th for the pass. Overall, we were 18th as well. PFF, I don't know how they do their runs or their O-line scores, but the total O-line, they have it 59.5, 60 is average. So it runs about.
We don't know how they do it. We just know that Zimmer hates it.
Yes, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of people that dislike it. The time PFF is really good is at the end of the season. Their accumulative grades seem to be more accurate because it throws out when, the guy blocked this guy and they think he missed, but actually his assignment was just to chip him and move up to the second level or whatever. They're not knowing the exact plays. It's the same thing that Patrick Peterson bitches about on the defensive side. Ooh, we got one Barn Lupicus joining the show. That's great.
Thanks, boys, for the compliment.
Okay, it's one of my favorite shows. I watch them daily. If you ever get a chance, a unique sense of humor, you get to laugh and have a good time as they talk very knowledgeable on their football and the Vikings. Now, went over the O-line. let's go back to the offense. Overall, even with that O line, the offense is doing extremely, extremely well. For ESPN, for yards produced, we're third in the league right now at 425 on average. For Football Outsiders DVOA, we're ninth with fifth in the pass and the run at 23rd. And that's surprising me on that run because both Cook and Madison have done very, very well. This is an interesting question, Quang. Hopefully he answers. Because I'd like to know. If that was Lupagus turned in 70 last night, that'd be amazing. There's but the offense has been doing very well. What do they need to do tomorrow, in your opinion, so that the Vikings are successful?
I think part of the success of the Vikings that the past 2 weeks in particular, the Cincinnati game was not a great showing by the offense, and a lot of it was the offensive line. I think Kirk was a little bit rusty in the first quarter or two. He missed a few throws that he's been making the last 2 weeks. The offensive line got murdered by the Bengals front four the whole game, and they committed a whole bunch of penalties. Penalties have really gotten cleaned up the last 2 weeks. I think we took 3 against the Cardinals, and wasn't much more than that in the win over the Seahawks. So playing a clean game that way is going to be helpful. We can't be racking up a bunch of holding calls on Myles Garrett, trying to prevent him from getting to Cousins. Playing at home should help. We shouldn't have the big false start issues with crowd noise or that sort of thing. So playing a clean game that way is going to be important. But I also think that, they're looking for the beer.
Yes. It's becoming my standby there, Joseph. However, I got to go to... Pardon to interrupt you, Darren. I need a beer run.
No problem.
Between now and tomorrow's game, because there'll be a lot of beer consumed during the game tomorrow. Yeah. But continue.
Either you need to consume it because you're really sad, or consume it because you're really nervous, or consume it because you're really happy.
Yes, either way works for me.
Yeah. But the offensively, I think that really the success comes. You got to have a clean game, not to have penalties that really set you back, and put the Vikings in those down and distance situations that we know Cousins does not excel at because he's not a mobile guy. And if you ask him to have to pass and long range when we've got to get more than 10 yards, it's going to be difficult because that'll give the Browns pass rush time to get at him, and he's probably going to check down anyway. Throw before the sticks. That's not great.
The 2 yards to CJ Ham. Nah.
But really, that the offensive line has to continue to be competent.
Improve, yes.
Not give up. Rashad Hill, the Myles Garrett Rashad Hill matchup is going to be huge tomorrow. Not that Hill's not going to get some help, but for the amount of time, whether it's 2.5 seconds or 1 second or 3 seconds, however long he's got to block Garrett when he's in the game, he has to win that battle not more often than not, like 90% of the time. Can he do that? We don't know. We'll see, but that's going to be a big one, and the Vikings have to give him a little bit of help when they can. I think really the Vikings screen game has to be on point in this one, just like it was against Seattle. We're talking a lot about Myles Garrett here because he is the best player on that defense by far. But Garrett and the Browns defense, they've been flying around being very aggressive in the 3 games so far. You can use that aggressiveness against them with the screen game, just like the Vikings did against the Seahawks last game, where they Cousins, just teardrop those little screens to Madison or Abdullah or whoever was the running back. When they're way up the field, they can't recover. We get nice, solid, even big gains out of that. and that I think the screen game has to be on point and working tomorrow.
And that features
Whether
our
it,
offensive linemen, what they're exceptionally good at,
yeah,
especially
yep,
Bradbury, where they're
Brad,
sliding out and getting in front of
get
these guys. And they're some of the best in the league that do that. And play to your strength. Hey, if it works, it works. And you get that nice yardage, nice slow progression down the field, hold the ball. If any of you want some good humor on Twitter, subscribe to Annie Agar. She's the comedian that puts on the league reports every week. She also does college football, but her one last week on week 3 was funny because she was holding on to the ball like a baby with her Minnesota shirt on, and they were complaining that you don't have to give it or you don't have to hold it on, hold the ball so long. And her as Minnesota, but I like it. You know, it's a it's a good way to keep the defense off the field fresh and a good way to win.
And the other thing that we have to do well is I think that just like last week, this week's matchup between Jefferson and Thielen and KJ Osborne against the Browns set of cornerbacks, that is a matchup that we we have a big advantage in, I believe, and we should win that. Uh, as long as Cousins has a reasonable amount of time to throw the ball. Greg Newsome the third is out this game. He's their rookie
Right,
cornerback. He's been starting. Some people say he's the best cornerback the Browns have. If he's out, it looks like Greedy Williams is in. Their second round pick from
right.
a couple of years ago, who
There's
has not
Greg,
really
but
was
too
not
bad.
really done very well. Ward's on the other side. I'm not sure who they've got as a nickel cornerback, but I like that matchup for the Vikings. I think Jefferson, Thielen, they should be able to win those matchups the majority of the time, and
And
that
Ozzy
will yeah, and that
getting those third
Ozzy
downs.
doing that. Conklin as well, although he won't
Mm-hmm.
be covered by the DBs as much, probably linebackers. But that is a matchup that the Vikings have to win, and I think they will win in this game. And JJ was last week. The Vikings really fed JJ. I like that. Um, but the beauty about the Vikings is you try to shut down one guy. Well, right now there's two other guys that we've got on the out wide that you can hit and are going to be productive as well,
Right.
whether it's Thielen,
I
whether
think we
it's
have more
KJ
weapons
Osborne.
than the Browns when it comes to the offensive side, and I think we need to take advantage of that specifically. And we do have a lot on our offensive side, and we've listed them all. And yes, shut down one, the others will kill you.
But one thing a couple of things about the Browns defense is that I don't know what we can take out of this, but one reason why it could be very important, it will be probably very important for the Vikings to throw the ball well, whether get the screen game going and have Justin Jefferson, Thielen, KJ Osborne, Tyler Conklin have big games in the passing game, is because the Browns defense has been very stingy with as far as stopping the run. I was trying to, I'm going to take a look at my little handwritten stats here,
Mm-hmm.
but they've nobody's run for over 100 yards in the entire game against them this year, and they're
Okay.
your it's the opponents are averaging roughly about 3 yards per carry. That's very
Low,
very low, but
pedestrian.
what can we take out of that? Again, the first game against the Chiefs, running plays are something Andy Reid does when he's bored and doesn't want to pass anymore. They never commit to the running game anyway. In the second game, you had the Texans, and they've got Mark Ingram and David Johnson are their running back combo, and
Yeah.
they're
Mm-hmm.
Ingram's okay, Johnson's maybe less than okay. That's not really a great running attack there. And last week, David Montgomery, who is a very good running back, but he didn't get much going because the Bears off because the Browns defense knew that that's who they had to key on.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't worried about Fields. They figured we were just going to pressure him, and we'll stop the run and worry about the rest later. So Montgomery could never really get going either. The Vikings running backs, whether it's if Cook's in the game or if Madison's in the game, they're better than all those other guys that the Browns have faced. And maybe our offensive line is a little bit better than those offensive lines. That's up for debate. But I think that this is a running attack. It will be the stiffest test for the Browns. But I think it'll still be a struggle for us to run with the success that we're used to seeing from the Vikings. So really the passing game, I think, has to continue to be strong like it was last week. And I like the fact that, last week I felt that the Vikings passed a fair bit more on downs they would normally run if they had Cook in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I felt they were a little bit less predictable on that. Like that 3rd and 8 late in the game, or it was 3rd and 9 late in the game. I don't know about you, but I thought that they were just going to hand it off to Madison. Nope. Cousins drops back, throws a 10-yard pass to Jefferson, who'd been killing anybody who'd been covering him all game. Just an easy pitch and catch. And I think a lot, we need to see
more of that mixed up play calling.
Mix up play calling, less predictability. Don't let the Browns get a read on what you're trying to do, particularly when we get in the red zone. Wasn't an issue in the first half, but in the second half, I felt there was some wussy play calls. I know what the Vikings were trying to do there late in the game. They wanted to keep running the clock. They didn't want passes that got incomplete that would stop the clock. But that their second field goal, they had a 2nd and 10 or something like that, and the Seahawks were loading the box. Everybody could tell that the Seahawks were trying to prevent the run and stuff it. The Vikings had to know that. They still handed off to Madison anyway. He gets stuffed for no gain. The next down, Cousins rolls out and throws it away with Madison in the area. That was kind of a wasted. I didn't like that play call. And then the next drive, we're down inside the 5, 2nd and goal. We handed off to C.J. Ham at the goal line. And it wasn't at the 1-yard line. We were at the 4 or 5. And then the next play, it was kind of a giveaway, bubble screen to Thielen with a whole bunch of traffic. We weren't going for the jugular there. We weren't. One touchdown there would have sealed the game, but we seem to be content with running the clock and setting up for field goals.
Which drives us crazy.
When you're playing really good teams, the Seahawks may not be a really good team. Maybe the Browns aren't a really good team either, but they're 2-1.
I think they're better.
You gotta be willing to be a little bit aggressive. Sure, yeah. Might Cousins get sacked? And you lose some yards. Yep. Might there be a turnover? Yep. Also, you might get a touchdown and put the game away instead of depending on your kicker to make a field goal.
Which reminds me of a meme I saw this week about Vikings going up and Zimmer saying, now it's time to run the ball and, run out the time to defend to win. And Kirk is like, why don't we just run up the score and win that way?
Yeah. One thing I'll point out, we've talked about what we think the Vikings, or what I think the Vikings have to do on offense to be successful. I think we also have to. The Browns' defense has looked pretty good, and everybody is going to talk about what they did to Chicago last week. But I saw this little tidbit of stats on the Daily Norseman comment thread, and I thought it was a very good, something I'd been thinking about, but I hadn't crunched the numbers. But they pointed out the Browns defense. This commenter pointed out the Browns defense versus Mahomes and Tyrod Taylor, who again played only half of the game in the Houston game, is they've allowed 565 yards and 47 points and only sacked the quarterback twice. And those two quarterbacks have completed 37 of 47 passes for 462 yards, threw 4 TD passes, and weren't intercepted. The Browns defense versus Davis Mills and Justin Fields, well, they've allowed 191 yards, given up 13 points, and those two quarterbacks completed only 14 of 38 passes for 169 yards. and 1 TD pass and 1 interception and 10 sacks, 9 of which were on Justin Fields last week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tale of two defenses there. You've got how the Browns have defended against quarterbacks who are starters. And Tyrod Taylor, by the way, in the half that he played, he was 10 for 11 for 121, 125 yards. He threw 1 TD pass. He ran for 1, and then he got hurt.
Right.
But he had the Texans leading in that game, and the Texans and Taylor really had the Browns defense confused. Taylor was doing a lot of RPO. He was in the shotgun all the time, and when he went RPO, when he'd pull that ball out of the back stomach, there was a ton. He'd had like basically wide open throwing windows between the hash marks the whole time. Tyrod Taylor is not a guy that I think most football fans would say is like an all-pro, and he sliced and diced the Browns defense in the time that he played. Kirk is not that same quarterback. Like Taylor also used his legs well to evade the rush, and Kirk's not going to be doing much RPO, although he did do one last week. Remember, Dave? And that was like the biggest shock of my Vikings fandom. I thought seeing him do that. I think it only went for a 1-yard gain, but we have done it once.
It's on
Cousins
tape.
is going to be under center more than half the time. He's not going to be doing RPO. When it's shotgun, it's going to be an obvious passing situation. So he's not the same type of quarterback as Mahomes and Taylor are. Not the same type of offense, but he's still a good quarterback, and he's been playing really good these 3 games.
In all levels, short, medium, and deep.
Yeah. So the narrative that the Vikings are going up against this real 85 Bears defense, maybe that's not the narrative. I haven't actually seen anybody say that. But that's my narrative today, Dave.
Okay.
I'm comparing them to the 85 Bears, so that's on me. But I think that the Browns defense has to, they have to prove that they're as good as some of their stats have shown. They got to show that they can shut Cousins, Cook, Jefferson, and Thielen down, just like they shut down Davis Mills and whoever was playing with him.
I agree with Viking Jerome here. No mercy. And Quang, strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Now,
hey, first quarter DVOA. Did I mention that?
No.
Yeah. Maybe we'll mention that as a don't let me forget.
All right, I won't. But speaking of not forgetting, you asked me to get a picture of this guy, Demetric Felton, running back.
Yeah, just Felton's. I noticed him in the games that I watched, the Browns.
Really?
He's not going to get a lot lot of touches, but he's their kickoff and punt returner, and he's
on the offense.
He's also he also sort of he's a third down kind of scat back. Obviously he's not getting a lot of touches because they've got Chubb and Hunt, and they're pretty damn good. But this guy, the Vikings, particularly the Vikings kickoff and punt coverage, is going to have to be as strong in this game as they have been in the previous 3, because he's a slippery dude, and he had a real highlight reel touchdown off a screen against the Texans where he zipped and made 10 guys miss and got a touchdown. So when he's in the game, pay attention to him, because and the Vikings better pay attention to him, because he's a skilled mofo. Yeah, and another weapon that they have that you haven't heard of, but he might make a few big plays in this game. Hopefully he doesn't.
Our special teams have been playing extremely well so far this season. And it's not just Joseph hitting all his kicks last week. And I think it was Viking Jerome says he needs to have a good game again here. Yes, I agree. And it hasn't been the great punts like the last one of the game last week.
Coffin corner
out on the one. God, that was a thing of beauty. But it has also been...
Greg Coleman was smiling.
Yeah. It was also just the normal special teams play. The punt gunners, the guys in pursuit. They have been playing extremely well, and that will help. That is a good section of the game. It's an important one, and that will need to continue. And the one thing that the Vikings will have on their sides that the Browns will not. I don't care that Kevin Stefanski worked for the Vikings for 14 years and everybody likes him. The Vikings will have this, and Viking Jerome, I think, is one that mentioned it. They'll have the fans. That place was absolutely rocking last week. As you saw, Justin Jefferson was, wow, it's loud. And I think it was either Kirk or Adam Thielen goes, wait till we score or get the momentum. Yeah. It gets even louder. So having the fans on our side in that stadium absolutely rocking is something I don't think the Browns have seen before. So that should be interesting, especially if it gets into...
They did play in Arrowhead, their first game.
Well, true. Yeah, I'll give them that. Arrowhead's loud.
That's about as tough a place to play as there is.
But we shall see. Any last words before we go? You wanted to talk about DVO, first quarter DVO.
We do. I think we've always talked about Vikings got to start fast, and some of the commenters have mentioned that. They got to start fast, got to put their foot on the neck of the Browns right away, get them playing defensively, get ahead of the get ahead of the game, get a lead, see what happens. And I saw this on Football Outsiders article where they're talking about the Vikings offensive first quarter DVOA, or they put out the rankings of all the NFL, the top 5 of first quarter offensive DVOA. DVOA is the Football Outsiders metric for like success of your team, whether it's offensive or defensive. And they also, Football Outsiders in this article also mentioned that the worst 5. Anyway, the Vikings offense first quarter DVOA, fans will be happy to know, is third best right now according to their stats, 40.9% efficiency. The Rams were number 1, and I can't remember who was number 2, but we were third. Right. And that's important. For Football Outsider said that's important because they said it's a leading indicator of future success. Ooh. So even though the Vikings are 1 and 2, and we were been very disappointed with their play so far, Football Outsiders, if you believe the analytics nerds, that is a sign that improvement is coming if it hasn't already arrived. And the reason it's an indicator of future success is because if you have success early in the games, it can allows your team to get a lead and mount a lead and force the other team to get out of some play calls, get a little bit more predictable in the play calling that they make, forcing them to play catch up. And that's the position that all football teams want to be in, is they want to be chased, not the chaser, or they don't want to be doing the chasing. They want to be the one being chased. Right. They want to be ahead of the score. So I thought that was interesting. I also don't know if it really reflects kind of what I've saw, though, because certainly the Vikings' first quarter DVOA in the Cincinnati game had to be pretty bad because they didn't score any points. Right. They didn't even, they thanks to a lot of penalties. In the Arizona game, I can see that because they scored on their first 2 drives. And then last week they scored on their first drive, but their couple of drives after that actually their next drive, they didn't get any points out of that. So...
Well, it seems like the opening script is very good for the most part, unless you shoot yourself in the foot. And then whatever Klint has done after that, he takes a little bit, but he adjusts and is effective, which is good until we get into the defend the win mode later. But if you're looking for if you've been looking for the Vikings this year to start fast and get off to a fast start, at least offensively, the Vikings have been doing that.
And so hopefully that trend continues tomorrow against the Browns, because I would also like to see the defense start fast.
So would I. Yes,
And
like
actually,
they were playing in the second half last week.
yeah, yeah. But the Vikings defense has been like horrible in stretches all 3 games, and then they've had stretches where they've actually looked like a pretty functional, solid defense. I don't know which is which. I do know that the tackling has been bad the whole game, all 3 games, and that's going to change
talked about
tomorrow.
this offline about how if their communication gels and the more they play, the more it seems to be. Last week we had the second half to as evidence. They could be a very good functional defense, and the Vikings can win a lot more games if that line of improvement keeps going, right? Especially on the defense. If the communication gets there, because it is a total bunch of new guys talking to each other. The offense still continues to play well and play better. This could be a dangerous team. Like Mary said earlier, tomorrow will be the test. GMAC, I hope you're right. This would be sweet if this could be done. What a demoralizer for the team and shit chocolate brown. Even though they'll be wearing the whites, numbers will be brown. Should be interesting. Last words, Darren, before we go.
I haven't said this yet. I'm feeling a Vikings victory, but I think it is going to be a close game. These teams are pretty evenly matched, I believe, but I feel that I'm gonna see the Vikings. I'm thinking like 34-28. That's what I'm going to go with for Vikings victory. Not super confident about that, I might add, but I am going to go with it.
It's going to be a test.
And the Vikings have to. When you go into like all the games become you got to win it. But really, the Vikings, they win this one, they get to 2-2. They keep pace with that team from Wisconsin who are going to beat the Steelers. If we lose, we're going to go 1-3. We're going to be right there with Detroit, who is going to get its first win against the Bears, and we're going to be 2 games behind that team from Wisconsin, and that's too big of a hole when you consider that really, with all the good teams in the other divisions, getting a wild card is going to be very difficult for any team in the NFC North. The playoff, right. The path to the playoff is you got to win the division somehow to get in the playoffs at all. Right. And the Vikings, I believe, are not going to get a wild card. That win the division.
Joseph, no, I'm not changing my official prediction. I predict a loss because whenever I predict them to win, they lose. So I'm predicting them to lose.
I feel the other way.
Okay.
I feel
it's
now that
pure
now
sacrificial, Joseph. I do believe we can beat the Browns. But I'm picking it the other way because I want it to be sacrificial, and I'm going to go 0-4 on my picks. That's the only reason. With that, what do we say?
Skol Vikings, baby.
Skol, everyone! We'll see you tomorrow after the game for the final score. I shouldn't say after the game. We'll probably be live in the last 2 minutes. Come join us and have a great weekend and make it a purple one.
Thanks, everybody, for showing up, and thanks.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.